One of the things I'd like to cover. I want to begin by just thanking you for letting me be with you today. There's so many familiar faces in this room. I want to thank my Institute team. Dr. Hester mentioned team earlier, and we've got a great team at Norton in clinical effectiveness, and at the Institute, at the Cancer Institute, on the floors, physician practices, our liaisons. I see you, Joe, Pioneer, started a whole lot of this navigator activity, liaison activity for us. But you know, I always like to tell the people that work with me and that I have the pleasure of working with, that there are things that we get to do, things that we have to do, things that we should do, and things that we want to do. And you really were on my get-to-do list today, because anytime I have a chance to reach out and touch somebody and just make this much of a difference in either how you treat yourselves, how you care for yourselves, or how you care for others, then I feel like it's been a great day for me. I also have a confession to make. So it's been a little bit of a rough week because I have a grandfather right now that's really, he's more like my father. And he is moving from ICU to hospice as we speak. But you know what? Everything happens for a reason. And what I would have said to you if I was putting together a slide presentation that I didn't put together because Will did for me, thank you, Will, a week ago, it would have been totally different than what I'm going to say to you today. And it all kind of, I really do think everything happens for a reason, right? And there's a season for everything. And going back to your question about health, it's relative, right? And you answered your own question, because he's a guy and had babies, and you're a woman and had babies. And your healthy state after that looked way different than his, no matter how much weight you lost. And he felt better when he sat down too, right? So it's relative. And you did a great job of answering your own questions, and it is on that continuum. So today, for my grandfather, health is, he wants his glasses and his teeth in water. Right? But guess what? Nobody can find his teeth. Right? So 96-year-old Cherokee grandfather that's been in a long-term care facility now for a few years that I take care of every day. Every day I see him either on my way to work or on my way home in the evening. And every weekend I spend Saturday and Sunday with him. And I don't go to church anymore. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I was raised to not miss church. I'm Catholic. Couldn't miss Mass. My mother would roll me over in the sheets if I didn't get up on time to get to Mass. And my grandmother, if I told her I was sick and didn't feel like going to church, she'd say, get up and go pray to get well. Right? You weren't allowed to miss church. But what I've found is, on Sunday now, I don't have time to go to church because there's not enough help in the long-term care facility where my grandfather resides. And if I want him to be fed and hydrated and have a good quality day, I have to be there. So 100% of the time, the last 2 years, if I've had to leave town more than 3 days, my grandfather becomes one of those readmissions. And this time, it was the last time. I left town for 3.5 days last week to go do a national presentation with my boss, Tracy Williams, and to talk about all this great work we're doing. And while I was there, no one got him up, and he's a diabetic. No one gave him fluids like he should have had. It was just easier. And he wasn't in one of our facilities. He was not. No one, but we're going to fix this. We're going to be a part of this community and fix this. But nobody got him up, because guess what? It's not their fault. It's not. Because you got one nurse pushing pills down the corridor for 60 people. She never even gets to go in a patient's room. They barely get to see a patient. And you've got PCAs that turn over like pancakes, right? And all they can do is what they can do. And if my grandfather is sleeping and he's breathing, that's a check for them. Kim's not here today. His son's not here today. Mrs. Jones has just, wet the bed. Mr. Jaggers down the hall is screaming and disturbing everybody else. And I've got to go hand feed a 32-year-old MD patient that's been there since he was 18. So they're not going to get my grandfather up and feed him or take care of him. And so the reality of everything that Dr. Hester said today is so true. This isn't rocket science. This time, I was gone just long enough that he dehydrated, and he had an MI when I was feeding him Saturday morning. So I got in really late Friday night. I got to him Saturday morning, and yes, I fed him biscuits and gravy. He's 96. So, thank you. Because here's the other thing I have to say. When I come walking in, I treat him like everything changes. Now he's the child and I'm the adult, right? And he's the best man I've ever known in my whole life. So when I say to him, if you'll just behave while I'm gone, like be here when I get back, I'll bring you hot Krispy Kreme donuts. Like, can you do that for me? Can you just get up when you're supposed to get up? Can you eat? Can you drink this big jug of water that I'm going to make sure Dad brings you every day? I can do it, sweetheart. You know, then I come walking in with those 2 Krispy Kreme donuts, and the nurse stops me and says, you know he's a diabetic, and I'll say, you know he's 96. Right? If he dies eating hot Krispy Kremes, I couldn't ask for more. I would love to go out that way.
Amen.
Right? Absolutely. Or White Castles. Steve, I don't really eat that way, you know. Well, every now. But long story short, it's not rocket science. It's about taking the time to know who the patient is. It's about using the Kristen Swanson model of caring. I mean, caring is the essence of nursing. And nursing and nurturing happens, you know, with all of us. You don't have to have an advanced degree. We want you to be practicing at top of license and within your scope. But really, you know, if you look at our model at Norton, which I am so proud of, and a lot of people in this room have helped produce this model and live this model every day. But what's in the middle? What's in the very middle? Self. Self is in the middle. So if we can't take care of ourselves, and we as Norton Healthcare leaders can't know what we want selves to look like, and we don't recruit the right people that know how to take care of themselves, and then that can lead their teams in taking care of themselves, and then can then show people at the bedside how to take care of themselves, our patients aren't going to get taken care of out in the community, in the bedside, and ambulatory care, because we don't have the energy to take care of them. So it's a huge continuum, yes, but it starts right here with finding people with compassion and caring. You know, when I like to talk about the C's, and when technology fails, I always have my little love notes here, like from 6th grade with markers or crayons. But, you know, while Steve was talking, I just kept thinking about the importance of caring, communication, cooperation, coordination. But compassion, that's really what it's all about. And you don't have to be a doctor or a nurse or have a long set of credentials behind your name to show compassion. You know, so an example of that is when I went in on Saturday and I found my grandfather lying on a bed with the sheets half on and his glasses crooked and bent and his mouth was dry. And I did a little bit of a knuckle rub on his sternum. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, will you just get me some water? And I got to tell you, I was not a happy camper. But I knew nothing was going to be solved that day because of what Dr. Hester said. There are major culture and paradigm changes that have to occur. And nothing was going to be solved by me screaming and yelling or being ugly with some little poor nursing assistant that's trying to do more than she can possibly get done. So instead, I said to him, get up, get dressed, what do you want? I'll bring you anything. I want biscuits and gravy. I'm going to go down the road and get you biscuits and gravy, honey, butter, whatever you want. And I got him up and I cleaned him up and I fed him. As I was feeding him, he had an MI while I was feeding him. He was dehydrated, badly dehydrated. He was admitted to a facility proximal to his care, not one of ours yet. But, and they have taken immaculate care of him. Immaculate. I couldn't ask for more. But last night, I digressed once more when, believe it or not, at 96, he was put on a respirator he shouldn't have been put on in the ER because of what? Lack of communication. Because my father, that's in his 70s, is a cancer survivor that I take care of, that lives next door, takes a little bit of oxycodone every day, right? And when they tried to call him, he was sleeping, And long story short, he got put on a respirator at age 96, which I was devastated by, because all the paperwork was done. Somebody just didn't think it was important to look at, right? You think those things happen? Yeah. So going back to your, what health is, I moved from, I'm not worried about him dying. He's 96. I know where he's going. He's the best man I know. He's had a great life. I just want him off the respirator, because all of a sudden health for him is peace. Just being at peace, right? It's relative. So the only thing that's going to get him off that respirator is prayer. So we all just help him get off that respirator. He got off that respirator. I walked in 48 hours ago and was sitting down my purse and all my stuff, if you will. And he said, "Will you get me some water?" And I thought I was going to pass out, right? Because they called me and said, "We got him off the respirator." I really didn't expect him to be oriented to any degree. And he knows me. He knows he's in the hospital. He didn't know what day it was, but neither did I. So, that being said, we got him there. And then when I walked over and kissed him and hugged him, I said, "Can I do anything for you? What can I do for you, Papa?" He said, "Somebody gave me a piece of ice this morning." He said, "And it was wonderful." Again, he's 96. I would have given him a hot donut if he wanted it. I said, "Hang on." I didn't even ask, right? I didn't ask. I just went and got a glass of water and ice and let him drink some water and let him have some ice. But my point is, I didn't need a doctoral degree in nursing to ask him, "What can I do for you today?" And to go give him a piece of ice, right? What bothered me, as great as his care has been, nobody had done that for hours. This was 5:30, and he had some in the morning, right? Point well taken. The other thing that bothered me was then last night, after a really long day, he just wanted his glasses and his teeth. So I went over to his long-term care facility, and I thought I was going to get to walk back to his room and find all of his things. And it was already cleaned out, done. And no one knew where his things were. They said to me, "Well, you guys came and cleaned it out." No, you guys didn't, and you guys are me and my father. That's on a cane. So I went all over the facility trying to find somebody, because you can't find anybody after certain hours in a facility, right? And finally somebody said, "Well, let me take you down to this room." It's like kind of like a soiled utility room to me. And there's 2 huge bags, all of his precious Izod sweaters and family pictures and his glasses, and hopefully his teeth are there. I don't know, because they're in the trunk of my car right now. But I pick up these 2 bags, and I can't tell you what that felt like for me. That all my grandfather's precious little things were thrown in 2 big bags, then thrown in some soiled utility room. It wasn't even a clean room. And he's a below-the-knee amputee, and there was his leg and his shoe. And what bothered me was, there's his glasses, there's his leg, there's his shoe. I found his denture container, but I still haven't found his dentures. But when we begin to think about continuum of care, we begin to think about health, if we don't get back to the basics of caring, if we don't get back to the basics of taking care of self and it being okay to take care of self, I am so proud to work for an organization where it's okay for Dr. Hester to get up here and look great, by the way, and tell you that he runs, right? I'm so happy to work for an organization, because I've worked other places before. I've been here 14 years, and I'll die here if they give me the chance to. Hope not, really, but you know. But it's so nice to be held accountable to be rewarded for, and to get to take care of yourself. I have horses, and for me, I need to be able to carry heavy buckets of water at 4:30 and 5 in the morning, and again at 7 or 8 at night. So I'm not healthy if my tendonitis is so bad that I can't carry my buckets of water. Health is relative. But we're not going to get there and understand that if we don't practice inclusiveness and compassion and begin to just sit with people and listen and say, "What's health look like to you? How do you define health?" Right? I define health as being able to be the best I can be at every stage of life. But we've got to be with. One of the things that we're not good at anymore, and the technology is great, and I love technology too. I got a Mac, I got an iPad, I got an iPhone, and I'm really big on some of the technology that Dr. Hester mentioned earlier. Thank God I have 4 teenagers, or not teenagers, but I had 4 teenagers when it was all coming. Now they're 22, 24, 26, and 28. But if I didn't have them, I couldn't work any of it, right? But we've forgotten how to just be with. How to just be with. And how to enable others, to do for. And one of the things that the new nurses will say to us is, I need a little bit more help with that being with. And then that being said, I love The 5 Love Languages by Chapman. I don't know how many of you have read his book, or you're familiar. And I know, I see Kathy shaking her. There are a lot of you that have heard this lecture before, and I apologize, but I always go here because it's so simple. But, it's all about managing deposits and withdrawals. And again, we all have different bank accounts. For everything you've done for me today, some people it's acts of service. For me, if my husband picks up my foot and puts it in his lap, it's like he gets anything he wants after that, right? Like I want that foot rub, not by somebody I'm paying, at the pedicure store. I need it now when I get home, right? Receiving gifts, those little lifesavers. We bought lifesavers this week at the hospital to give to some of our new grads. Thanks for being a lifesaver. Doesn't have to be a bigger diamond, right? But my 2 favorite ones, quality time and physical touch. So, Mother's Day was just here. I told you you've got 4 grown kids. So one's a Special Forces Marine. Thank God he just got home. He reported last Thursday. He's been on a special mission between Israel and Yemen and Africa in harm's way, and he got home. And I wasn't there to touch him, but thank God for video. I got to send his new little bride, his high school sweetheart, and I got to see that picture of her embracing him and just bawled my eyes out. It was beautiful. I have to see it later. But that quality time for Mother's Day. My kids said, what do you need, Mom? What do you want for Mother's Day? I said, well, Brian's in North Carolina and Will's somewhere, out on the battleship. But my 2 daughters were, I said, all I want is quality time. I don't care what we do. I don't want to go anyplace fancy. I just want to be able to touch you and have quality time. And physical touch. I can't tell you, I told you I didn't go to church anymore on Sunday. They're so short-staffed at lunchtime in the long-term care facility where I care for my grandfather, that I feel so much more spiritual and faithful and religious when I can just walk in there and at least half of them have nobody. They don't have a granddaughter coming to see them. And sometimes I'll just walk up and put my hand on one of their shoulders, take a few of the ladies, some of my costume jewelry, or something I've outgrown, or something that, just I would take to the Goodwill, help serve coffee. I get more out of that than I ever got out of church. Now, I'll go back to church again one day, but everything's relative. And too many times we beat ourselves up for that too, because we can't all be 10 places at one time. We have to make tough choices. We have to hold ourselves accountable and teach others how to hold themselves accountable to do the right thing. And there's a difference in doing what's right and doing the right thing, right? Because that policy might say, you need to get rid of that great employee that was great for 25 years, but boy, their attendance has really gone downhill in the last few weeks. Does anybody stop to ask them why? Right? Same thing goes with the patient, doing what's right and doing the right thing. There was no order for me to give my grandpa a whole cup of water last night, but we're moving him to hospice today. So if he wants a glass of water, he's having a glass of water, right? There's a book called First Break All the Rules. Anybody ever read that book? That's what it's all about. It's about compassion. It's about being innovative and thinking out of the box. It's not rocket science. It's about critical thinking and knowing when to break that rule. I don't have a whole lot of slides. I really just, Steve mentioned relationships earlier too. And I attended a really nice conference. Some of you may have been there. There was a really great conference in Indianapolis now a couple of years ago. And it was called How to Navigate from the Woods to the Hood. And the title wasn't meant to be offensive to anyone. It was respectful. It was talking about the importance of having people that can form relationships, that can become entrusted, that can critical think, that can do simple things like follow up on the CHF patient that Dr. Hester mentioned earlier. Like maybe just go to their home and ask, what has their menu looked like for the last week since they were discharged? And if Mr. Johnson says, well, you know what? My daughter works at Hu Man Food. She brings me home leftover Chinese food every night. I've been having that good grilled. I don't do the fried stuff anymore. I just do the grilled stuff, right? All that MSG and all that sodium, all that soy sauce. He thinks he's really doing good. And his feet are this big around, right? It's about checking that cupboard for those potato chips and those pretzels. That salt. Instead of Mrs. Dash or garlic or whatever. It doesn't take an advanced practice nurse to do that. So, I think the challenge in the future is, as our nurses are retiring, and as lay people are retiring, and we're looking for ways to bring value to the community, we've got to be innovative and think out of the box along that continuum. And where are those touch points where people outside of professionals can become engaged and make a difference? And I know I'm doing a little bit of legwork with the Red Cross right now with Madeline Abramson. We're beginning to look at how do we reach out to those retired nurses? How do we get engaged now with nurses that are planning to retire in the next 2 to 7 years to begin to help them, essentially gain the skill sets that they need to work differently. So that's really all I wanted to say to you today. I'm happy to take some questions as well. Any questions? Oh, come on, try this. Any questions about anything? Well, thank you. Dara, okay.
So with the big concept of care and compassion, the question earlier is how you teach what's health. How do you teach compassion? It is one of, you can teach nursing knowledge, you can teach if you've got a bad leg, walk this way, how to use crutches, but to teach people to do that little thing, and like you said, it's different for everybody, but to teach people how to look for that thing, have you found, but
Dara, I couldn't have planted a better question, so thank you. And if you don't know, Dara has a really cool and yet challenging role at Galen. And she has a lot to do with what compassion looks like there and what those nurses come out doing with compassion. And so, again, you have to choose the right people. And again, I'm so fortunate to work for an organization that's as sophisticated as it is, that's able to get out and teach our managers how to do behavioral interviews, right? So I don't want you to come and tell me all your strengths and tell me all your weaknesses. I want to know, I want to give you a scenario and I want you to tell me what you would do, right? Okay, got a 96-year-old getting ready to die and all he wants is his teeth and his glasses and nobody can find them. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to call the long-term care facility if they're not at my place, and I'm going to tell them they lost them. And they better replace those teeth. That's not the person I'm going to hire, right? I want that person that's going to say, well, first thing I'm going to do is go talk to the patient and just empathize. Say, I'm sure this must be very hard for you. So what can I do for you right now until I find your teeth? Would you like a milkshake? Is there somebody in your family I can call to bring you hot donuts? Right? But I'm looking for people that can honor not just diversity but inclusiveness. And I'm gonna answer that with this as well, Dara, because I figured out a long time ago that my daughter, that was the least academically astute, was my child that was going to be the most successful. When we were on our way to a swim meet in Jasper, all 4 kids were swimmers. Anybody else in here got swimmer kids? Now there's these sweatshirts, it's the last day of my life, I want to spend it at a swim meet because they last forever. That was my life. So, we're on our way to Jasper. At the time, I was in charge of surgery for our Norton facilities, and it was pretty much routine Saturday morning to get a call from anesthesia because our rooms weren't turning quickly enough, or we had too many heart patients in and not enough of something, and sometimes they would use some not so nice superlatives with me, and my kids could hear them. And I said to this anesthesiologist, I said, you know what, if you could just be a little kinder, just a little nicer, we'd turn those rooms for you much more quickly. if you just treat other people like you want to be treated. Got off the phone, and all the kids are in the car, and the one that I was talking about, her name's Katie. At the time, she's maybe 13, 14. Anybody have a 13, 14-year-old girl? Yeah. You want to suit her in her mouth. So she said, she rolled her eyes, and she said, you know what, your generation just kills me with that stupid golden rule thing. And I'm thinking the devil has possessed her. Right? I'm thinking, she's lucky I don't believe in domestic violence. So I said, what are you talking about? And she said, you just have it all wrong. She said, it's not about treating other people like you want to be treated. It's about treating other people like they want to be treated. And I almost ran off the road. I really did. So my older daughter, that's a nurse now at Norton, working on her doctorate at IU, expecting my first grandbaby in September, like she was in shock too, because she just was. She thought, oh my God, I didn't know Katie had that in her, right? Yeah. And the boys, they're still playing their game, their Nintendo. Sorry, they didn't quite get it yet. But I knew at that moment she was going to be okay, because she got it. I didn't have to read a book. And I have not forgotten that since then, because this new generation, they might lack in some areas, but they don't judge as badly as we did. They're more forgiving. They don't care about the gold watches and the plaques. They want work-life balance. They'll move and leave home just to find a better environment so they don't have to take allergy pills. Right? That's what she did. She's in Colorado now having a ball. But my point is, it's so much about just taking it back to the basics and Dara, asking people, what does compassion look like to you? We need to be able to recognize compassion. And it's empathy, and it's sympathy, and it's all those things. But to answer your question, what are we doing? We've got to start this big is my point. You have to recognize it early. And we do have an Norton Academy where we have juniors and seniors in high school. And your least likely candidate is sometimes the one that we scholarship and we help move through that continuum of caring, if you will, to become a nurse or become a doctor or become a physical therapist. But we have to redefine what compassion looks like. And the only way to do that is to ask people, what does it look like for you? What compassionate act could I do for you today? Right? We've got to find people with those qualities. And then we have to reward them for being compassionate.